hope you're all doing really well, and welcome to my spoiler-free review of Midnight in Everwood. So Midnight in Everwood was a complete cover buy for me, as well as like an interest in the Nutcracker retelling, and in the land of retellings I haven't seen that many Nutcracker ones and stuff, which is kind of what drew my interest to this book. My only experience with the story is from the Barbie and the Nutcracker movies, as well as Disney's The Nutcracker in the Four Realms, so I don't really know too much about the actual story from the ballet and from the original, I think it was a book, was it originally, or a play? I don't even know where the story comes from originally, that's how little I know about it. So I can't really come from it from that point of view, but I can sort of, I know a little bit about the tale and stuff. But yeah, I was really interested just to like see a new retelling and stuff, and like I said, it was a complete cover buy, so the fact that I actually happened to really enjoy this one was really exciting for me. So without any further ado, here is my review of that book. Synopsis is Marietta is a young woman in Edwardian society who wants nothing more than to be free from her obligations to her parents, and she just wants to dance ballet. And her upcoming performance in her class's production of Sleeping Beauty is set to be her last before she gives up on her passion in order to marry and fulfill what her parents want of her. She's kind of caught between her fear of disobeying her parents, but also her fear of what life will be like for her once she marries and gives up on her passion. And then Dr. Drosselmeyer moves in across the street, and she's initially enamoured with his charms and starts to contemplate the idea of marrying and stuff and being okay with that. And she's enamoured with his charms and his looks and his magical inventions, but then becomes quite aware quite quickly that he's actually got a lot more sinister and a lot more has an ulterior motive into getting close to her and stuff. And realises that the set that he's designed for her final performance of her dancing is actually a magical trap that takes her away to the land which contains Everwood, where she becomes trapped in the palace of the Grand Confectioner, and she has to forge alliances with the other women trapped there in order to fight for her freedom and return to her own world. So, as I said, this was such a surprise for me because it was a cover buy, but I just found it to be so magical and whimsical, and I actually happened to really like the characters. Whilst they didn't have as much depth as I usually like to see in a character, there was enough there that I just really enjoyed seeing them all. They were all really likeable, and the relationships and friends that they formed were fun to follow. Starts with the plot. I think it's really well paced, this book. You spend about a third in the real world and then the remaining parts of this book in the fantasy land, and I think we spend a good amount of time with Marietta in her own world. We get to know what her daily life was like, who she is in the context of her own world before she's out of her depth in the fantasy land. You get to see her relationship with her parents and her brother, her passion for dancing and why it's so important to her. I think it spends enough time setting up Drosselmeyer as a character as well before you start to kind of find out what he's really about and stuff. And then you come to Everwood and the Fantasylands, and again the plot is really well paced. You understand why Marietta doesn't see the danger of this land until it's too late for her. Almost living in denial as well, and just seeing the opportunity to escape and dance to her heart's content and stuff, despite the fact that there's all these very clear warnings that she shouldn't be doing that. But you almost understand why she's just so taken with the magic and the beauty of this world and stuff. It's really well done, I think. And and just in general, the action versus the character moments, they had a really good balance between how many of those you had and where you had them. And I was able to read this in one evening, which I always think is very telling for a book's pacing, is that if I can sit and read it in one go without getting bored and not wanting to put it down, that's always quite telling for me personally as to whether or not it's been paced well. In terms of characters, Marietta, I happen to really love Marietta as a character. She's very well-meaning and full of dreams and full of fear of this life imprisoned to someone's wife, because that's how she sees it, with no passions or hope left. She doesn't want to end up like that, and you understand then why she ends up in Everwood and why she decides to kind of stay initially, because she is just so terrified of that fate. And while she likes to think she's aware of her privilege and stuff, her journey throughout the book helps her understand that she does have a lot of privilege and stuff, and realising that she just needs to take a step back and consider what other people are going through and what other people perhaps don't have that she does. She does go through a very interesting sort of arc of self-awareness and self-reflection and things, as well as just general kind of development. You know, what she goes through allows her to see who she is and make herself better because of it, and I think that makes her a really likeable main character. She's flawed, and she's still flawed by the end of the book, but she's aware of a lot of those flaws, and she has grown and matured from some of them as well. You know, she does definitely just... her motivations almost change, and while she still has a similar end goal, her motivation has changed and stuff, and because of what she's learned in the people she's spent time with. In terms of Drosselmeyer, I think a very great antagonist for the first portion of this book. I loved how he was charming and gentlemanly, and you yourself as the reader find yourself enamoured with this man, and then you alongside Marietta then start to feel really terrified of him when you realise that he's got ulterior motives, that he's, you know, he's actually quite sinister and stuff. He makes for a really, really good antagonist. You know, and it really felt like he was backing her into a corner and stuff. You know, there was no way she could run from this man because he clearly has magic, he clearly has lots of influence and power and stuff, and she kind of felt herself just have no idea where to turn, who to turn to, because she couldn't turn to her parents, because obviously they're very happy for her to go off and marry this guy. Her brother wouldn't take her seriously. You know, she's terrified of this guy, and you understand that fear. I liked the ambiguity around him as well, like no one really knowing much about his past and where he came from. I find his manipulative nature and stuff really compelling in an antagonist. I actually do quite like villains who are able to seem charming and nice. And to everyone else, you know, it makes them that much more scary and unsettling when the main character and you as the reader know that they're not to be trusted and that they're actually quite nasty. I do wish that we got a few more answers about him than we did, but at the same time we didn't need to know too much more. You know, he served his purpose and things without needing too much exposition about him, and his ending as well in this book I think was very, very satisfying, like where he ends up and why. I find that to be quite satisfying. And the fact that he was that he was the antagonist as well is quite fun, because in other adaptations I believe Drosselmeyer is always the good guy. You know, in the Barbie movie it's their aunt who sort of, you know, helps out Clara and stuff. In the Nutcracker in the Four Realms he's just sort of someone who's a friend of Clara's parents and stuff. I do really like the fact that in this book they went for actually Drosselmeyer as the bad guy. And in terms of these two characters that you meet in the Fantasyland called Dilara and Pirlipata, and they're like Marietta's sort of friends that she ends up forming a bond with because they're all trapped together. I like how you have Pirlipata as the more welcoming of the two, with Dilara being quite bitchy and stuff and really not wanting to form any sort of bond with Marietta and stuff. But then you find out why she's like that and what she's gone through since she's been imprisoned in the Grand Confectioner's Palace and stuff. And she just becomes this... She was already a great character, but then I think having that just depth just makes her so compelling and understandable and stuff, and you really understand why she behaves the way she does and stuff. You know, and then you also have Pirlipata as this fantastically resilient woman who has not lost her faith that she will escape one day. You know, she's doing her best in the situation she finds herself in. She's just a fantastically strong character as well. And I liked how the relationship with Marietta developed. It felt very realistic, like it didn't develop too fast, which I really liked. You know, quite often when you have characters all stuck together they become friends almost too quickly, whereas I like how it took some time for that trust and that bonds to build, and they still, you know, they still challenged each other and stuff and didn't just trusted each other and things. It was just really, really good. And I liked how Marietta as well then reflected this friendship with these two women on a friendship she has in the real world, and sort of almost vowing to make more of an effort with those women and not just, you know, and just kind of sees life when she can the minute she goes back and stuff. And that's one thing about her arc I really like, is how it's just, even just being able to appreciate the little things, like the two friends that she has in her ballet class, and how she actually wants to make more of an effort to be friends with them and be close with them if she ever manages to return. You've also then got Captain Lingat, I think is how you pronounce his name. And this is the sort of nutcracker character in this book. He's an interesting character, although not my favourite, but I did enjoy his and Marietta's relationship and how that developed. You know, they argued a lot and challenged one another for their beliefs and ideals and their positions. And he was a good character with more to his story and how he almost blames himself for a lot of the circumstances that everyone's finding themselves in. I did like how this book examined his conscience and how he copes with the position he's in as the captain of the guard for this, you know, quite horrible Grand Confectioner. Despite his moral obligations and the fact that he's very clearly a nice person at heart, he's sort of caught in this sort of situation where he's not really sure what he should be doing. You know, man's doing his best and we appreciate him for that. And he didn't have as compelling an arc as I would have liked, to be honest, but he still developed a lot, and he's a side character so we can kind of let it slide. But I did like what he represented in this book and how him you know, his and Marietta's relationship developed and what that meant for her character and stuff. You know, he was a really, really important character, and I didn't really realise when we first met him how important he was going to be as well. I didn't realise that he was supposed to be a Nutcracker character. In terms of the kind of Nutcracker point of view, that's kind of not really brought up in the book, to be honest. There's this small thing had to do with that, but like that's towards the end as well. So I feel in terms of like actual Nutcracker stuff, that actually is very not relevant. But then the rest of the kind of world building and stuff from the story is. I thought the visuals created by the description were fantastic. Like you can definitely get an idea that the idea that this world is this icy snow place but made from sugar and confectionery. You know, I loved just the sort of sweet scenes and scents and stuff that you imagine when you're reading it. I liked how it explained multiple worlds as well, like how Marietta's was connected to this world, and also just the general politics going on in Everwood and its surrounding countries and stuff, and everything going on with the Grand Confectioner. Particularly through Prilipatov, who comes from a different country in this world, and the politics and stuff to do with that and stuff. I found that really, really interesting as well, and it added a very good backdrop to what's going on with Marietta. You also just, by the end of this book, you also still get the feeling that you've only seen a small portion of this world and the people in it. And I definitely enjoy books like that because, you know, it's quite clever to be able to give just enough world building that you know exactly what's going on, but you still get that feeling that this world is so big and rich and vast that there's just not time to get to know everything. So I actually really liked that about it, the fact that there was some things hinted at and mentioned that weren't really developed because they weren't relevant. But it just kind of makes the world feel well thought out and well designed and things, that there's still more to the story despite the fact that this book is now ended. And the castle of the Grand Confectioner and stuff as well, and how his rule was established and how it affects everyone, and with some of the resistance stuff that's going on, you know, it just felt really well thought out, and you had enough of it there to inform the world without it feeling too much and too overwhelming with information. And then kind of just in general, it just felt very Christmassy. I was in such a Christmas Eve sort of mood after reading it, which is a shame because I read it like the week after Christmas. But it just captured that magic and buzz and just winter and celebration that you just kind of feel when you're on Christmas Eve, and I just loved how this book ended as well. It was a very satisfying conclusion and a satisfying end to Marietta and her story, and the final few pages as well just felt so good and uplifting as well to read. Like, it does have a happy ending, which I'm very happy about, and I don't feel bad about telling people that, but it's just a fantastically great retelling and it does feel like a fairy tale. But yeah, have you read Midnight in Everwood? What did you think of it? Let me know down in the comments. I know this one has been a bit divisive and stuff, so if you've read it, let me know what your thoughts were and we can discuss what we had differing opinions of. If you've reached the end of this video, feel free to subscribe and feel free to leave a like, and as I said, leave a comment down in the description. I did daily videos last week as well, so if you want to see the kind of books that I read and what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy, I have books like best and worst books and stuff, so definitely go check out the videos I did last week. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.